Hey, David here, and welcome to my Extra Mile. I have a beautiful couple on today, they're professional network marketers, and you're going to really learn how to cast a vision so your spouse can get involved with you. And using the method of showing, not telling, and really enrolling your spouse in a vision that you have. So enjoy the show with the incredible Kyle and Megan Nekrash, and please subscribe, share with friends, and of course, get involved with the conversation. We'll see you on the other side. And my guest, my first couple, I'm so excited about, and we've already met the husband, so I'm not going to talk about him, because if you want to hear his bio, you got to listen to show number 1 I did with him, right? So go back and do that. But I really want to focus on his beautiful partner. For me, she's one of these people that's always been a light. Whenever I look at her, whenever I see her, even if I'm watching her when no one's watching, she has this light about her, this passion for life, this curiosity, this fascination. She's a businesswoman. She's a leader, and she's vulnerable. I love that she's so honest in her feelings. You know, when things aren't going right, you're going to know about it. She's just brilliant at showing sort of an authenticity that I love. She's fantastic, and I want to introduce you to the lovely Megan Nekrash. Hello.
Hello, David. Thank you so much. My goodness.
Who's the scruffy old fella sitting next to you?
I know. It's a quarantine beard. I hope quarantine's over really quick.
Well, I want to talk about that briefly, just to let the listeners know. Listen, this is during COVID-19. We may reference it, but I'm not going to focus on it. But if we do reference it, then bring it into your current situation, because, what's your COVID-19 you're going through right now? It may be a separation. It may be, your business is down. It may be something, maybe relationship issues with your kids. But again, whatever we talk about, we want it to be timeless, that you can bring forward. And the second is, we are using Zoom, so the sound quality, if you're listening on a podcast, may not be great. I don't want you to focus on the quality of the sound. I want you to focus on the quality of the content. With that being said, Megan, let's talk about you for a sec. You as a traditional business owner, you own a massive clinic, arguably the most successful clinic in your town. We have 9 practitioners. It's a full business, and you have young kids. Talk about life before you got into building a residual income, building, your network marketing capacity. Go to life before. What was it like?
It was exciting. It was really busy. Kyle and I worked together for many years before having children. And so we really got used to having a rhythm and a routine. We worked as massage therapists at a heli skiing operation at a lodge, a couple different lodges, which was really fun and it was exciting. We did some incredible things skiing wise. We lived in Jasper. We had a clinic with a chiropractor in Jasper. We had a practice within a clinic. And then we moved back to Nanaimo, back to where I'm from.
Well, let's talk about Nanaimo, just so people get context. We're talking about on an island off the west coast of Vancouver. So you're actually sort of quite remote. And the size of your city, and what's the size of Nanaimo?
I think when I moved back here, it was about 90,000 people.
Yeah, so not a massive place, pretty remote. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was we went to work and we built this incredible business. We worked with 2 other chiropractors, and we were really passionate about what we did as massage therapists, and it was exciting. And I think we worked really, really well together, building a very solid practice. And so then we looked at it after 8 years of practice within this chiropractic clinic and decided that it was time for us to move out on our own. So we bought our own commercial building. We'd also, we'd never like to say no to any opportunity. So we were also working with a football team in Nanaimo, volunteering our time, working as team trainers. And we took on, in a very short period of time, we found a beautiful building, commercial building, purchased it, and moved our practice to this building. I was also pregnant at the time, so I was about 4 months pregnant when we actually moved. And so we very quickly wanted to ensure that, we had stability in our new business home. And then we had our daughter. And, so then my practice looked a little different shifted to working part-time, how that all looked, but it was working really well. And then we had a second child, all within a very short period of time.
And then we went insane. No.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
But with that sort of that's a life that a lot of people can understand. They have sort of, maybe even if they're employees, they work and babies come along and their vision of what they have for their life. But you then, at this sort of time, this juncture where you appear, and I'm going to ask maybe Kyle to jump in on this one, you appear to everyone on the outside to have everything you ever want. You got the 2 kids, you've got the house, you've got the business, you've got a successful practice. What was going on financially, Kyle? How was that? What was that feeling like for you, and both of you? But obviously, when Megan goes part-time, you're now stepping in sort of full-time and a half, right? So what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, owning a building, it was funny because when we were working with other practitioners, and we thought, geez, we're paying a lot of rent, and what would it be like to have our own building? And it's kind of funny. We did own the building. We had other practitioners that were working with us. I think there's 9 of us inside the building at the time. But I'm telling you, it was probably less lucrative than it was before, because when you take on your own practice, the level of responsibility completely shifts. So you're not just walking in, doing your job and leaving. You have to take care of all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And so, what was that like? Gosh, I think we had just opened the building. The paint was so fresh. People were complaining about it, and so we were busy out of the gates because people were waiting. And I think it was probably the second week, David, the heat pump went, and it was so hot in the building, and our secretary had sweat arms down to her belt, and all of a sudden we're like, oh, a heat pump, how much does that cost? What? $5,000? What do you mean? We just got here. And so it's one of those things where you as you dive into perception wise what's going to be, this is going to be much easier, the responsibilities actually became a lot more. And so again, as Megan said, we were working with a little football team inside town. I ended up going and working with the junior AAA hockey team, and had a child. And, so it was kind of like, we're already used to being busy, I guess is probably the best thing to say, before we got into the network marketing profession.
Yeah. Megan, go back to this time where what made you say yes? I understand that you had both open minds. Kyle talked about the closet you had at work that was full of all these different products that were always dropped off to you. Please try this, try this, try this, try this. But what was the moment that you sort of started to look at this? Or were you resisting it in the beginning? Was it just one more thing? I've got kids, we got this. Are you serious? We're taking on
it was that, totally. It was, David, it had been such an incredible, and I think we both have really high energy, and we love being challenged and having, something new on the grill, so to speak. But after what we went through to get the clinic up and running in such a short period of time, we didn't skip a beat with, our patients transferring over, and then having Julia within 2 or 3 months of doing that. And then having Nathan within 2 years of having Julia. So it was so compressed that when Kyle came to me and said, hey, what about this? I was like, are you kidding me? And I always remember just thinking, I feel like I'm on a runaway train. He's the lead engine and I'm the caboose. I'm just putting the brakes on. I was like, we have to keep our minds on our practice. Like, look at what we've just invested into. And thank goodness for Kyle's vision, because we were already capped out financially and I just didn't know it. So when we were, double income, no kids, we could just work all day long, and we did. And I was always squeezing in an extra patient here and there, people who needed to get in, because we had quite a long wait list. We were blessed to have a very solid practice. And so all of a sudden now I'm working part-time, which was really, really scary for me because we were self-employed. I didn't get mat leave. So I worked up until 1 week before having Julia, had Julia, and I was back at work within 2 months. And anybody who's self-employed knows exactly what that's like. And we made it work, but it was really a very uncomfortable place for me.
Well, you had no choice, really. I mean,
we
there wasn't a choice in that world. But again, if we look at what the world was looking at for anyone perceiving your life or witnessing your life, think you've got all your ducks in a row. You think that, you know, I always say you never know what's going on in someone's bedroom or their bank account, right?
Totally.
And so, you know, you've got this wonderful appearance of life, but, you know, now the reality is that, you know, you're tapped out financially because now you're offering 9 jobs to practitioners plus staff, which again, you know, which means that you get paid last typically, right? There's all these things going on. Talk about that, Kyle, just a little bit about this transition from understanding that your linear income, you know, there was something else called a leveraged income, which really what you were trying to do with nine staff. You're really trying to leverage your time. Talk about that understanding that you already knew leverage, but you didn't get leverage quite.
Yeah, I didn't understand it. And sometimes it takes your own real life, quote unquote, experience for you to go, oh, okay, got it. And just like the closet that we had at the clinic where we were always being pitched different things, I kind of had a closet at home because my wife didn't quite grasp the whole vision of the network marketing. And so where our sort of aha moment happened, David, we were on a little, it was maybe a week or 10-day vacation with some close friends of ours that you know very well. And I just happened to notice that we were getting paid each day while we were there. And traditionally, you know, in the clinic, we would have to kind of front load our business a little bit to save the money to go on a vacation. While you're away, if you're not in the clinic, you're not producing any revenue. Yes, there's a little bit coming in from all the other practitioners, but it's covering costs. And then when you come home, you have to backload by, you know, you're now working extra hours. So the thought that we were someplace else away from the clinic and each day we were getting paid. And I was like, this is unbelievable. And so that was, I think, I'll never forget when I actually showed you my cell phone on the beach. I'm like, look at this, you know? So that was probably when the first transition started. And then the second one, probably the most powerful one, was when our second child came. So just before Nathan was born, and Megan still wasn't quite, I was able to take my products out of the closet, but she wasn't.
You were allowed to eat them in front of her, but that was it.
Yes, that was it.
Don't you dare talk to one of my friends.
That's exactly it. And so, you know, it was funny because I said, listen, I said, I'm going to replace your income by January. And she's like, it's August, you think? I'm like, I'm going to do it. And
Can I just back you up a little bit though? Sorry.
Sure.
Because it goes a little bit back beyond this. I was pregnant, like 7 months pregnant. He had a grad reunion to attend. And Warren, a very good friend of ours who actually introduced us to the product in the business, he said, Kyle, the only way you're ever going to really truly get this is you need to get to an event. And so he said, I know you have the time off because you're going to your grad reunion, come with me. And I didn't want to go to the grad reunion because I was pregnant. And so I said, sure, go with Warren. And so he went to Warren, and it was, you know, capturing the larger vision of the company. And when he phoned me from the airport after 3 days of being immersed in culture of the company and whatever else, he's like, babe, our lives are never going to be the same. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he drank the Kool-Aid. Oh no. But it was really, truly that when he came home, I saw something different in him. And so I couldn't see the vision. I still didn't see it. But I just watched him and thought, okay, I'm going to borrow your vision for now, and I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to give it a year. Like, we'll give it a year. And so when he said, you know, I'm going to replace your income by December, I was like, oh, as if. And he didn't do it in December. He did it by January, like the next month. And that was the next aha moment. But it was really about me having to, I just saw a light had gone on within him, and I had to follow that.
Yeah. And you're lucky, Kyle, that, you know, she allowed, because some people see the vision and they come home and the spouse is like, and you must see this a lot in your teams, where the spouse isn't supportive and isn't just saying, hey, you got a year. They just kind of feel like they're not on board at all. What's been your experience with that? Obviously you had support, but you've worked with a lot of couples that haven't. What's your thoughts? What's your advice to anyone listening?
Well,
I still wasn't super supportive.
I don't want to throw under the bus, but yeah.
I really wasn't supportive because, so I mean, I had said yes to this, but I had no idea what it entailed. So we still were like working full time with kids in clinic and everything. And then, you know, he was putting in 2 hours a night at home, which by all means is not a huge amount of extra time. It's like you're not watching TV together or whatever. And, you know, sometimes he would be doing meetings on weekends or going away for, you know, learning experiences. And I found that a little bit hard because I didn't see I couldn't still quite capture everything.
Right.
I saw that as being time away from the family.
Right.
I just wish that I could have seen back then what I know now, and I would have said absolutely, because it's given us that time with our family.
Yeah.
So to answer your question a little bit is that I always say that it's probably more important that you show them versus telling them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where Megan, when the income actually showed up, she was like, even if we rewind, I remember calling Warren saying, we got to cancel this show. Just stop this auto, whatever it's called, ship thing. It's not worth my marriage. And he goes, Kyle, just one more week. And he goes, you're going to get paid. And I would show Megan the little paper check back then. They used to come in the mail. And she'd go, right, 1 more month then. And I'm like, oh. So, you know, so you kind of, it's for me, it was about showing her. But when I think about another couple, and there's a great book. I think I actually got it from you. And there's a quote inside the book that said, you know, expectation is your enemy and detachment is your ally.
Magician's way?
Yes. And so when I bring that phrase up and I say, you know, you have this expectation that they should understand what you're doing or where you're going or what you would like to pursue. I said, can you imagine coming home with your underwater welding ticket and looking at your wife and getting rattled that she didn't want to do the same thing as you and become an underwater welder? I said, it's in essence is exactly the same thing, right? You know, we snicker at it, but yet there's this distension when you're like, oh, the reason I'm not successful is because my spouse is not supporting me. And so they...
I'm glad to ask you about that whole blame thing, how someone then gets sort of like, well, because of you, we're failing. Instead of, look, let me show you. That's why I just want to go back and say what you said, because this is really sage, is, you know, hey, show them the way. Don't use them as the excuse, right?
Mm-hmm. Love that.
So Megan, talk about that. So you're getting to a point, things are starting to happen. What was the transition? I mean, because once you crossed the line, because you spent a long time, you actually I'm not sure how long that was. How long were you kind of quietly resisting or overtly resisting? And what happened? What was the moment you had your kind of aha, hey, this is the direction we're both going together? What occurred?
It's going to sound like we're tooting his horn, but remember that first event you went to? If you're whispering, everyone can hear you.
Yeah. I mean, it was really, for me, it was getting to an event, in all honesty.
I remember the event.
It was getting to an event, and it was, for me, I had to have my own experience with the understanding the company and the culture and the community. I already had been able, because I was pregnant and nursing, I wasn't able to utilize all our products, but I was able to take, you know, some of the basic ones, and that helped me to understand that component of it. And I had a bit of a background in product knowledge anyway, so, you know, I got that part. But it was really a journey. It was a journey. I had seen what having a belief in the company and in the product was profound for me. I'm not gonna, you know, sugarcoat it. It was still really challenging, making sure that everybody in the family was having their needs being met. And because everything was so new to us, being parents, being clinic owners, being in network marketing. So it was really finding that groove. And honestly, it just took patience and understanding. Would I do it differently now? 100%, but I have a better knowledge and understanding. So there was such a newness and a rawness with everything that it was challenging. I think for me, as the kids got a little bit older, and we finally made the decision that we as a family had to, we were playing in too many sandboxes, and we had to choose which one we were going to play in. And when we looked at the big picture, as much as we thought we would, you know, be massage therapists forever and own our clinic, and that was our dream, our dreams had changed a little bit. And then there was a reality that had occurred as well. And we made the choice to step back from the clinic, step back from practice, and that really gave us some breathing space to think clearly. And then we approached it more, we were able to approach it more as a united front, as opposed to dividing and conquering between two businesses.
Yeah. Give us some timelines, Kyle, because a lot of people listening may not understand from the moment you resisted saying yes for a long time. So tell us that time. And then, you know, sort of the real part-time, couple of hours a night, how long was that before, you know, and then so give me sort of like a timeline so we can understand the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first time I consumed the product was in June of 2004. And that whole 4 years from 2004 to 2008, I really, there's a lot of resistance in regards to the business. I was still resisting the product, even though I consumed them every day because they were working. So on came this, in my way back then, this investigative innate sense to really just dive in and learn. And I just, you know, big kudos to Warren, because he put me in contact with everybody, formulators and doctors and people, where it sufficed that, okay, everything that I've asked them.
You were looking at this a little bit through your medical lens, right?
Yes. And so I still had to get that justification, if you will, or that I needed to know. And so the event, as Megan talked about, that Warren snuck into my clinic, found out I had a grad union, and we ended up going to Phoenix, where I first met you. And coming back, that would be in 2008. Wow. So that was actually, it was almost exactly 4 years. It was in June of 2008. And that's when I came home, and I did everything that I swore in my body I would never do. I asked friends to come over, and I did a meeting that next day, like right away.
Was that scary?
That was scary. And I had Warren as my sidekick, which, you know,
scary.
My energetic friend was even, but it was a brilliant meeting. And it was something that I think that you probably have heard this before, but it might be of value to the listeners. And I want to go back to the retirement part, David.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I was up there, and we did this presentation. I basically just shared with them what I saw and what I felt. And there was 10 people there, and plus me, it was 11. And I said, look, you guys, a year is going to go by. They all do. And we have kids now. We know how quick that is. And so will 2, and so will 5. I said, but if we all considered committing just 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, that means we give up Survivor, we give up Bachelorette, we give up hockey games and football, all things that we won't even remember a month down the road, never mind it impacting us or our family. Where could we all be if we committed that 2 hours each in 5 years? Because there's 11 of us here, that's 22 hours going into your 2 hours. I said, we don't get that in any of the businesses that we're in right now. Mm. And it was just like this. And I was waiting, and I was like, oh. And you know what? My good buddy Sean, he said,
there's 11 people there.
11 people.
And so you're saying one of them caught the vision that night?
One. Yeah. But here's a beautiful thing, and for people who are building, this is also another valuable tool.
He was the first to say yes. They all captured the vision.
Yeah. I'm on there. He said, we'll give you a year. And I was like, oh, someone said something, but hey, a year. And it was like this domino effect. And I think it probably would happen in any situation where the fear of missing out, you know, someone, yeah, okay, we'll give you a year too. We'll give you, and all of a sudden it's like, everybody said, we'll give you a year. And then I was like, crap, now what do I do? Right? But the lesson inside that, David, is that had I gone to each one of them individually, I don't think that we would even be here today, because individually I had already all said no to me several times. Right. But as a group, there's an energy and a passion in the room, and it took one of the dominoes to fall, and then the rest went. And so when you do stuff like this, as scary as it was, like I said, to do the thing I said I'd never do, it probably was the most pivotal moment in our business, because now all of a sudden we had a whole new energy. We had a quote unquote team, right, that we were going to foster and grow with. And so that was in 2008. 2009 began doing a little bit of training and things like that with the company. 10, 11, 12, Was it 2013? We were in Bahamas. Yeah, and we get a phone call from Kathy Coover, and she's like, "Hey, I'm going to see you tomorrow, but I just want to let you know that you guys are the 85th couple or people to earn $1 million with an Isogenics accumulatively." And we're like,
What year was that?
2013.
How cool is that? Yeah.
And we're like, and even though it was one of those things that we were kind of expecting to happen in the 5-year time frame from going, okay, let's press play, to when we got that phone call, that's only 5 years. So even if you took $1 million and divided it by 5, that's $200,000 a year. Well, that didn't happen like that. It started off very small, and then it was enough to go, oh, this makes sense. And then the next year, I think we matched our clinical income, and then we doubled it, and then we doubled that. And
two things: you're working really, really hard. In those 2 hours, you were like focused, right, in the beginning. So super part-time, but super focused. And obviously, for you to be able to generate that, even that small income, that's where a lot of people quit. They look at the end of the first year, and they weren't maybe as engaged as you were, and didn't maybe see the same vision. But they look at their income saying, "Oh my God, I've only made this much." So if you think about your first year's income, what would it have been?
I think it was around maybe close to $30,000, I think.
Yeah. So, but it's still for a lot of people, that would be like, nah.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think what people fail to see in that is that if you build correctly, that's still 30,000. It's 30,000 that's still coming in. And so it's going to come in next year again too. And the next year and the next year. So the other part of this is when you look at the business structure, if you go from either being employed or like we were self-employed and you're paying for everything, you're being handed a business for the cost of product or whatever, different companies have different things, but you're given a website, you're given phenomenal customer support. You are given all these things to literally open your business. Whereas we paid our secretary, we paid for our hydro, we paid for our website and our web controller or whatever. And it was really, really expensive to own a clinic and have all of that. Whereas here, sure, maybe it's just $30,000 to begin with, which is still a great amount of money. But look at what you're also getting with that as your basic base for your business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I just want to, I forgot where I was going to go after that. I have
your retirement, your transition.
Yeah. And so the message I want to, two things. Number one is that we discussed it in our first call, but we talked about what people may perceive as sacrifice. So during those 2 hours, I was giving up. I was giving up things. I was giving up time with my wife. I was giving up time with my kids. I was giving up things with an intention. That was the difference versus sitting there feeling guilty. And so I'll never forget my dad came down to visit, and it was right in the middle of when we were really growing. And so I would always go downstairs right after dinner. I was on the phone, either connecting with people, supporting, or enrolling. And it was I was down there for 2.5 hours. And he said to me, he says, you're always so busy. We never get to see you. And I said, it's only in the evening. I said, I want you to imagine something. I said, I knew only how much money I could make at the clinic. And what if I decided to take a job in the oil field where I would be away from my family for a good year or two with little visits at home? I'd make a big chunk of cash and I'd come home with this to invest it or pay off my house. I said, I probably would get more respect from that versus being at home every day, waking up with them, picking them up at school, sending them to school, but taking that 2 hours at the end that's perceived to be sacrificing time away from others. I said, which one do you think would make more sense? And he was like, huh. And it was funny because just last year he came over and he was here for 2 weeks and I says, remember that time way back? I said, that's what's allowing us to have 2 weeks where we get to go and do whatever we want. But back to the retirement message, David, is I really believe that we tapered our pulling out of the clinic. So we had worked Saturdays for 13 years, wow, every Saturday. And so we thought, and it was only a half day, right? And I said, let's take Saturdays off. We'd already doubled our clinic income. And I said, let's take Saturdays off. We can have like a long weekend every weekend. We're like, okay. So we took off Saturdays and we had other practitioners come in and take it. And so we did that for about 6-8 months. And I was like,
let's take Fridays.
This is cool. Let's take Fridays off. And
what
so
other day can we take
took
off?
Fridays off, right? But we did that for quite a long period of time, like another year. And then we took off Thursdays, and we were only working Tuesday, Wednesday. And then Megan left. I was working Tuesday, half a day Wednesday. And it was at the point where, so that time frame was 3 years. Just to give you perspective of where somebody would have gone, I've doubled my income, we're out, I'm retired. And you slip into that place where that false retirement sense, because you haven't developed that muscle, that habit to go from one to the next. And it's so much more valuable, because I say to people, pull away from your profession with the new income that you're making, so much so that you fall back in love with it, because you don't need to have to go to the clinic anymore. And so your appreciation of going to work completely shifts, and you start to love it again. And then if you love it again and you still want to leave it, all right. Yeah. But don't pull the plug too early.
Mm-hmm. So Megan, with that sort of build, as far as, really transitioning, we see it so often where people have retired too soon. Right. They don't keep this part-time long enough, and they don't, quite often. Is there a formula that you two discuss as far as, if you're building a side hustle business and you get it to a certain income level over time, that you start to really consider, moving part-time or moving into full-time, but that more gradual approach? Is there a formula that you go with, the two of you, or have an idea about?
I don't know if we have a formula. I would certainly, let's face it, some people love what they do, even after 20, 30 years, and they don't actually want to end their profession, but they also see that maybe they're capped out financially, they've hit this ceiling, or they want something new and different in their life because they don't enjoy watching TV in the evenings, which is phenomenal. So, there will be a group of people who just want to be able to build a side shuffle and maintain what they do. There are people who are sometimes, unfortunately, desperate for the secondary income, and they will build, they'll build like their life depends upon it, because it kind of does. There are people who then realize, everybody is, the journey is different. I guess for us, what I would say is, it depends on what they come in to the business needing or wanting. There's people that are like, I need to make these payments, on a monthly basis. And so we create a plan for them to match their formula of what they're needing, what bills would give them breathing space. For some people, it's, $500 a month makes all the difference. And so that's really easy to work out for them. And they're happy with that. What we find is often people will begin with that, and then they capture the vision of what's possible. And they say, well, actually, or it happens organically just by, they love, the business component, enrollments increase. And, pretty soon they're at $1,000, $2,000 a month. Some people at that point are looking at options they had never considered before. They didn't know that maybe they could retire from their job or move away from it or whatever. So that's the point where we will generally coach people into, okay, you need to definitely make sure that your income through a network marketing is able to cover everything. Times two before you step back. And even then, we will always say, step back slowly. Some people know they're just done with their current profession. So absolutely, as long as they are financially in a position and they have a solid team built, awesome. But, we just,
I think the key thing, Dave, is we just say, when you match your income, it doesn't mean you're in the safe zone.
Right.
Because people look at it and they go, okay, now I'm earning this and I'm earning this. Our aperture's changed. I'm earning this, I'm earning this. Hey, I can jump out. Well, when this is 100% gone, because there's no, take backs. You can't go back to your boss that you said screw off and get your job back. This now becomes, instead of it possibly being fun, it becomes pressure. Because if this starts to dip down, then the pressure starts to increase, which now your methodology of how you build possibly can change.
And that's the myth. There's a lot of myths that I want to dispel through the show, but one of them is the idea that residual income, people define it as, income while you sleep, whatever, or they have this idea that residual income is an income that you stop working in. Well, residual income is completely the opposite. Residual income is, you're always going to have your work is always going to be there if you want to sustain. And that's why you see builds, you know, you see people's income go up, you see it flatten, you see it go down, you see it flatten, go up. I mean, and your build's been like that. Your income has moved up and down. Like I think every entrepreneur, if you own a restaurant, it's not like year over year, you always have the same income. The income fluctuates depending on what's happening. Talk to me a little bit about that. You know, the idea of residual and the fact that even all these years later, you two still get up and treat this as a real profession and go to work. I mean, maybe you do it differently. I want to explore before we end the show, building as a couple, the sort of the do's and don'ts and the peaks and valleys that you've gone through. But let's have a look at this thing first, right?
Love it. So, I mean, probably the big thing for us, the eye opener is, you know, given it could be any time. It could be the current situation that we're having now, or it could be, you know, we had a situation where Megan's father passed away. I mean, there's so many different variables that can come at you at life. And so when you speak into the word residual income, when those things came at us, if we were at the clinic, we wouldn't be able to cancel our day or week or a month to go and be with somebody. It just wouldn't work that way. You'd lose your patients. They'd end up going elsewhere. Right now, we wouldn't, you know, we would be now into our 4th week of not working at the clinic, which means no money would be coming in, but we'd still be paying rent. That's the power behind that residual component. And I think that, you know, for us, it's, you know, building as a couple, we both have strengths in different areas, right? And I think if the advice that we can give through our lessons, of course, and our transparency, the advice that we can give is that just to not compare one strengths with the other strength, but to allow them to continue to grow in each of those areas, because they both come together and create balance. But when there's possibly a comparison going on, it can create that disrupt, and there's the energy sort of starts. And you know, you're about to say something, right?
No, I think just really, what Kyle said, recognizing each other's strengths, respecting that it's good if they're not identical, or even some, you know, if you have different strengths, that's a bonus because you can cover more ground with that. Patience. Kyle and I, we worked together for a long time. I thought we knew how to work together. You know, I mean, we were great massage therapists. We were great clinic owners together. We did all that kind of stuff really well together. So I just thought, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake when we sit down next to each other at our desks, because we went from each having our own rooms in the clinic, and like we had 2 rooms each, and we would just go between our own rooms all day. We'd see each other in the hallway and, you know, take care of our own patients, to literally our desks are next to each other. Well, guess what? He speaks on speakerphone all the time. It drives me nuts. I can't sit next to him. Like all these things that, you know, you don't know when you work in the room next to somebody. So there has been, there has been a big learning curve for us, even though we know each other that well and in business that well. So I take my hat off to all couples who build together. Don't, you know, take the time to really sit down and communicate with each other. That is probably the biggest thing. Find out your best method of communication and really work on that, because
give us an example what you mean by that, because someone may, what do you mean by that? Because what's your best method of communication, you two?
I think we have, like, we really worked hard at trying to have like scheduled hour on Friday, where it would be our powwow hour, where we would get together and we would leave and we'd go have lunch and we'd bring our book and we'd strategize what's going on, what's happening with the kids. Because quite often, as I'm diving into this, I'm completely distracted from what might be going on with the kids in sports this week, and vice versa. It could be going both ways. So, I mean, or
to be totally transparent, Kyle will do a lot in a day and he doesn't really communicate with me. So people will actually say, I always say, you have to email both of us. Don't email Kyle and think that I'm going to know about it. Like, CC me on everything. And he doesn't do it. He's taking care of this, and then next he's off to the next thing. And there's not that. So
that's that passion quadrant of his, right? Where he's all in 100%.
Totally.
Right? So if he's on his motorbike, or if he's drinking a bottle of wine, or if he's whatever it is, it's 1,000%. Yeah, talk about the do's and don'ts. So, or the idea of learning how to become professional network marketers in the same home and raising a family. I think you've gone through lots of ideas. I mean, and how one person can feel like they're not doing anything, or they're doing all the work, and all this kind of like crap that goes on between couples who have to learn this. What's been some of the do's and don'ts and some of the ahas, and how have you over time developed your working relationship to be successful?
Don't give up. That's the thing. That would be my biggest key. Don't give up. In those moments where you want to like throw your hands up in the air and kick walls, take a deep breath, and then always come back to the table. Look at your short-term goals and your long-term goals, because that's really your GPS. Make sure that you guys are in alignment and you have an understanding and a commitment to your short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. And then figure out the path that you're going to take together, and make sure that, like Kyle said, take that time for powwow. And it's not just business. You have to know, for me, I know every schedule for the kids in my head, and, Kyle appreciates that. Kyle does things in the business that I don't do. And I'm so appreciative of that. So tell each other, acknowledge each other. Don't forget to date. That is so important. If I could say one thing, don't forget to date. Life gets busy. And when you set that time aside for each other, you get to experience each other as you originally knew each other, or what you fell in love with. So just always fit in the date nights. They are so important.
Yeah, those ritual routines. Carry on, Kyle.
And I'll go back to what I was speaking about earlier in regards to expectation and comparison. Like if those two, I don't want to say those two words, but if those two feelings or actions were removed completely, I don't know what marriage wouldn't work great together. But often there can be comparisons going on, or expectations of, hey, listen, I busted my butts today, and what did you do? And all that kind of stuff gets tossed in. So when that's released, and we've felt it years back, and we know what it feels like now to not have it. It's such a freedom. But you'll see behind us, like we have little vision boards, right? And when you enroll the children into the next trip or the next, and it doesn't have to be anything huge. It can be just small stuff that because if they don't understand, we've run into this with our kids, especially the life that we've created where we're always here. Heaven forbid if we're on a call for an hour, we must be gone on a trip for a week. Like that's what they're seeing. And so it's so important to be able to give them a target and a purpose as to why we're doing it, so that they have understanding without resentment, because this conversation is good for adults, but for kids, they have a completely different feeling, a different mindset. They have a different expectation. And so without them knowing that, there could be this little resistance between, your kids and yourself. So, we even have them do their vision boards. We have them included in our vision boards. And so that there is this external enrollment around why we're doing what we're doing, versus, them thinking you're always on a call. I'm like, we've done one this week.
Right. When you look at this, it's an incredible journey. You look at who you've become. And I remember, first meeting you, a lot of years ago now. What was it?
Long time ago.
13 years ago.
Yeah.
But just looking at who you become, how you talk about the world, how you talk about people, how you see each other, how there's this kind of the very journey of network marketing in the right company, with the right set of values. We sort of joke that it's a personal development program with a compensation plan attached. But what have you noticed within this profession? Had you stayed in the clinic where, and you'd been still there, you're still going in for that many hours a day, probably trying to get Friday afternoons off once in a while. What do you think has been the biggest shift in, the non-financial reward of going through the journey to become a professional network marketer?
I think it's a feeling of unity that we've never felt before. See, in the clinic, it'd be funny. There would be other clinics in town, but it was a competition of who had the better clinic, or who could outdo or outplay or out whatever. And even when we got together as massage therapists, as a collective, it was good, but you didn't feel magic between people. And when we stepped into this, the one thing that we noticed right out of the gates was just how much other people, we were like, wow, other people think like we think and they act like we act. And oh, I'd like to act like that guy because I love his energy, or I'd like to learn from those people. And all of a sudden there's this massive resource appear that we never knew it existed. I can see how people have this perception that, oh, they drank the Kool-Aid, because it's really what life should be. It should be a collaborative. It should be a collective. It should be, but it's not. And so when you get to step into that world and you see friends that, you see them once a year in an event, it's like, oh, and it's just got this incredible connection. Or you meet them at a different destination on the other side of the planet. Or now we have friends where we can go anywhere in the world. I mean, not anywhere, but pretty much any continent and visit. Where in the clinic, that wouldn't have happened. In fact, I think, if we spoke the way we spoke and had the energy that we had, we'd probably lose patients, because that's just how people think outside of that sort of realm. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was, prior to network marketing, I was a no person. I said no to, well, a lot of people in network marketing, but I wasn't even open to the possibility. I wasn't even really open to, I had my mind made up. I figured I knew, I had sort of heard the tales of the people who had, different companies that had first started out, the people with the garage filled with water coolers or whatever it was, water filters, and that it wasn't a very well respected industry. I didn't really know enough to say no, is what I now, and for a long time I've seen. So this whole journey has opened me up to a whole different way of thinking. Somebody will now approach me with something and I will always listen. It may not be for me, but I will absolutely give them the time. Whereas I wouldn't ever really do that before, because I had my preconceived notions. And I think, like Kyle said, it's just given us such a wider, broader view of, I've always loved humans. I've always been fascinated by humans and by people. And I also feel like I have an ability to always seek and find the best in everyone. But this has given me a massive platform to meet new people, which I love, both within our company and our community, and creating lifelong friendships, like Kyle said, and meeting new people who we bring into our company or onto our team, and being able to watch them grow and explore their visions. And it's been just an incredible experience to be able to not only receive, but then to be able to pay it forward. Wow. Over and over and over again.
It's taught us to celebrate success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To watch people, and they don't even have to be in this profession. They could be doing anything. And we are, when someone does something that they would, hey, guess what I just did? I'm like, no way. And we make it so much bigger than it is, because there's not enough of that out there. But the profession taught us to do that. Yeah. Because we not only got it, but we also did it. And so outside of the profession has taught us how to celebrate success outside of our profession as well.
Last question, because I want to honor your time. When we look at right now, we haven't mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it just to close. We're during the coronavirus right now, which means you've been at home for weeks, as have I. But the idea about becoming a professional network marketer, and when we really understand what residual income is that we keep working. It's not a retirement income. There's a whole money mindset around setting up residual income to create a passive income, if that's what you want. But I'm not going to go there today. Talk to me about your rituals and sort of daily practices, both as a couple, as a family, that's allowed you to sustain your success and continue to grow your success even in hard times. What are some of the things that you're saying, this is how we treat this as a profession? And even though we're at home now, we still get up and we still, there's a focus, or there's a certain things that we are non-negotiables each day, because we realize we are professional network marketers and we do have a profession that needs us to be there. What's some of the things that you want to end with as far as your daily activities and rituals, and especially as a couple, how you split loads, right?
So I think personally, getting up, and the first thing I do is I listen to a guided meditation, and I do a little bit of reading. As a couple, it's funny. This is a different time. We would fight for each other's time, but we seem to always be with each other, but it's the type of time. So we do have to walk down to the dock by ourselves and not answer the phone and just so we can have a connection with ourselves. In our organization, having regular team calls every single week, no matter what. And if anything, just to check in. Where are you at? What are you feeling? What's going on? Versus having to train something. We have a separate call that is specific to just our leadership. And then we do customer service. That's probably been the most rewarding part, I think, right now during this time is just the check-ins, the customer service calls.
These people are not in your business, they're your consumers. And you actually realize that you're a customer service part of your role, because every time they consume that product, you get paid. We get paid on the consumption of product from our customers primarily, and we're going to have 90% more customers than we are business builders. So you actually have a philosophy in your home that you will deliver customer service to your customers, right?
It's huge for us, yeah.
Well, that would explain your retention, because you have high retention, right?
It helps out, especially at, because network marketing can be linear and leveraged income.
Right.
It could be linear, up front with just front end bonuses and leveraged at the end with, your residual cycle growth. But for us, I know what it feels like to get a call out of the blue from somebody. And so I think that's probably just the whole premise behind it is paying that forward, just knowing what it feels like for us. So is there anything I feel like I took
Well, I think because this is such a unique time, I'm sort of homeschooling now. So the beautiful, it's just such a beautiful reminder what this type of profession allows us to do. Is, Kyle, we switch gears a little bit, and he will, be in the office more. He'll be on calls in the morning with team. And I am going through math 6 and socials 6.
Like, Kyle, how do we do this one again?
Totally. So, there's that little bit of a shift, but I think consistency, and sometimes your steps are big. So you have big consistent steps, you have the time, you have maybe a new goal or a new focus, and you are running the race, you're running a sprint. And there are times where, due to life occurs, maybe your steps are smaller in your business, but as long as they're consistent. So customer service, and working with team for sure.
All right. And just the last comment, I want to throw it back to you. Any last thoughts? People are listening right now. Some people are thinking about quitting because they're finding it challenging, or some people are in that blame game with their spouse or a significant other where, well, why aren't they supporting me so we can't succeed? I mean, we know the stories that are going on, but what I love about your story is how it's been a long story. Nothing happened overnight. It took years for you to say yes to the business, and then it took years for you to begin to exit your previous profession, and it's taken years for you to develop as professional network marketers. I know you both, you work with anyone, whether they're financially linked to you. Kyle, I hear that all the time. You're always on calls to people that you have no financial link to, just sort of really giving back and contributing. But what's a last thought? What's something you want to leave someone listening to you on that think maybe could help navigate them to understand it's a real journey, and it does take years, and it's worth it, right?
There's always a truth behind every story, every success, if you wish. And I find that as of late, people who are in their first year, second year, third year are like, and I let them know, I say, hey, 4 years, I did everything I could to resist this. And I could have quit at any given moment, but I carried on for those 4 years. I don't recommend it. I don't, say, hey, this is a good thing to do. However, because we held on, and I like to always, I joke along, Sean and I do this all the time, especially when we're in unique situations. We always say, what's good about this? And if you actually looked at what you had in your hand right now, regardless if you were making an income or not, and said, what's good about this? And if that's where your focus went, that's going to be your next rung on your ladder, because you now just shifted your mindset because you were about to climb off the ladder. And then when you get to there, you're going to find a whole new area where you find out what's good about this. What's good about this? And so just having that, obviously an attitude of gratitude, but really shifting the focus, instead of thinking of what's not working, what's bad about this, just turn it around. Because I always say to people, if I yanked everything from you right now, in this very moment, all of it, the products, the culture, the little bit of money you think you're not making, if I yanked it all right now, what would you miss? And all of a sudden, oh, there's this perception shift. And I go, that's what you need to hold on to when you're thinking about what's good about this.
Awesome. And Megan, final words from you? Any thoughts?
I think anybody who has embarked upon the journey of network marketing, I consider them a visionary. I was not the visionary. Kyle was the visionary in this. Thank God he captured the vision, because I sure as heck didn't. So I know that the path and the road for the visionaries can be challenging, because sometimes they are cutting uncut path, and it's challenging. Other people aren't going to understand what or why you're doing it. Write it down. If that's you, what did you capture? What did you see? What did you see was possible? What did you love about the opportunity? And go back to that and just sort of see where you're at with that whole initial vision. Stick with it. Stick with it. It takes time. We all see people that race to the top, and sometimes people do it very, very quickly, and that's good. That's their journey. It's okay to do it slowly, as long as you're moving forward, you're learning, but you have to enjoy the journey. So find the joy in it, and sometimes it can be challenging. Don't give up. Stay in alignment with what you see and feel, and that will change too as your journey goes, but really continue to enjoy and experience joy with it, even in the challenging times, and don't give up.
Beautiful words. I love you both very much. You know that. I want to thank you. Kyle, this is your second show. I'm going to have you back with other couples, and I really want to sort of mix it up so we have real great conversations. This has been a great conversation. Lots of takeaways. The book, I just want to say the book again because we didn't say the full name. It's called The Magician's Way by William Whitecloud. If you sort of wanted to hear what that book was, it is a great read. And with that being said, I just want to remind everybody that this is all about my extra mile. It's about, what do you do when you leave this show? What's those small things you can start to implement consistently over time that will allow you to create and have the choices that you've heard about today from our beautiful guests, that they really are living. It's not a dream life. It is an extraordinary life. And because it's real, it's tangible. So there's no dream about it, but they live in a beautiful location with a beautiful home, a beautiful family, and they've created this time and choice. So again, go out of here, put it into action, do the small things consistently over time, and you will experience the extra mile.